Howdy guys, Jimmy Song here. In this video, I'm going to talk about something different. I'm going to talk about Marie Kondo, why we have so much stuff, and how that relates to Bitcoin. So, first of all, if you're not familiar with Marie Kondo's work, she has, I think, the KonMari method, and it's a really interesting book about, basically how to get rid of a lot of the clutter. She's very much a minimalist and talks about how you should really take a look at your possessions and figure out whether it quote unquote sparks joy. I read the book. I thought it was really interesting, and there's a lot of thoughts I have about specifically what our possessions mean and so on. But going back a little bit, well, how does this relate to Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is essentially a way in which sound money comes back. Under fiat money, we are encouraged to consume, and that means buy a lot of stuff. And what a lot of that stuff ends up doing is it clutters our minds, right? Like it makes us, it clutters our houses. It like takes up a lot of space and so on. And the way it does that is, usually the advertiser tells us, okay, if you buy this thing, you will be this type of person, right? Like when you think about an Apple ad, they're not selling you necessarily the features on a Mac computer. They're really selling you sort of like an identity, and that's what really good ads do. Is that they are selling you, a gateway into a particular type of person that you can be. And I think what's so effective about the Marie Kondo method is that, when you're thinking about your possessions, oftentimes what you end up doing is you need to reevaluate why you bought that thing in the first place, or why you were gifted that thing in the first place. And oftentimes it's very much tied into your identity. I've known so many people that have bought like DSLRs thinking that they become a photographer magically because they bought a DSLR. That's not how things work, right? Like, yeah, you have to put in some time, some energy, some effort into learning about photography, shooting a lot, and like oftentimes like post-processing and posting them and getting feedback and all this other stuff in order to become a good photographer. You don't necessarily just become a photographer as a result of buying a DSLR. That's not how it is. But a lot of these companies want to sell you on that identity with that possession. So if you do have a DSLR in the corner of your house, there's a lot of guilt associated with that item, because you think you're this person that it could be a photographer, but then you find out that you aren't, right? Like, and you have to deal with that emotional reality. There's guilt there because you didn't do what you promised yourself to do, and there's also sort of shame there because you're not the person that you thought you were. And this is a part of the trickery of a lot of these advertisers. Is they want you to buy it regardless, and like just sort of go from there. They're not interested in you actualizing yourself and figuring out who you are, and so on. They just want to sell you on that identity, and then that's it. And you have to sort of deal with that emotional baggage, and that's what this whole method is all about, is dealing with that baggage and going through all of your stuff and saying, hey, you know what, like that actually isn't who I am, and I need to come to terms with that, and basically throw this out or get rid of it or sell it or something in order to provide emotional closure for that part of yourself that you thought you were. All of this stuff I think is really much more mental and much more about maturity and much more about who you are as a person. And that's what dealing with this stuff really means, and that's why I think it's just been so effective. I'm not sure she would put it in these exact words, but as I see it, it's a way to mature and to figure out how you've kind of disappointed yourself, or if it was like a gift from somebody else, how you've disappointed that person. Because oftentimes, people gift you things as a way of sort of trying to make you into what they see you as, right? Like sort of defining your identity on your behalf, and being able to say, okay, well, that's not who I am, and therefore I'm going to, get rid of this thing, and I'm going to live, and be the best me that I can be, and not the me that other people think I am. And that takes a lot of maturity, right? It takes a lot of um, ability to sort of stand up for yourself. It takes courage. It takes fortitude. It takes prudence. It takes a lot of virtue in order to be able to deal with a lot of this stuff. I applaud her for sort of bringing this to the forefront in sort of like a very approachable way, because clutter is something that everyone deals with, but they don't really know the root cause. And oftentimes the root cause is figuring out who you are, right? And like sort of dealing with some of the emotional scars of consumerism, essentially. And figuring out, okay, well, I've been sold a bill of goods and I need to deal with it, and I need to deal with the fact that I was wrong about me, right? I was wrong about this, or I had the wrong assessment of who I was or who I am, or I'm not this person anymore, and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, very good book. I would encourage you to read it. As usual, I blame a lot of those ills on fiat money, but that's another video for another day. Anyway, hope that helps you. This song is done.